Hello. Thank you for joining us. First panel of the morning. It's a pleasure to be here. So thank you to Energiesprong if you're knocking about. So I'm Dan Hyde from Everything is User Experience. We are a UX strategy agency that we do websites and apps and stuff like that. But user experience is about people's emotions and attitudes in response to a product, system, or service. And Alex, my colleague over there, he's the taller one. We have been applying the stuff that we've learned working for corporates, doing websites, doing products, to the built environment. And today we're going to be talking about a bunch of resident research that we carried out following a deep retrofit project led and managed by my colleagues here. So, this is the panel. We don't really need to dwell on this because you can see us. So, I think we better introduce the project. So, Zach,
yes.
Would you mind just giving a bit of background? So, where Alex and I got involved, our research has been to help make sense of what residents' experiences have been in terms of going through the process and how they're benefiting from the outcomes, the value that they have experienced. And the work that we are doing is intended to feed into the development of Energiesprong's comfort plan proposition. So selling comfort as a service as a means to fund deep retrofit measures. So, Zach, would you mind picking up and explaining a bit?
Yes, I'll explain that in a little more detail. Thank you, Dan. So I think it's probably worth me explaining what Energiesprong is, because I see some familiar faces in the crowd, so I know some people know what that means, but it's good to just start at the basics. So Energiesprong is really kind of a movement. We're trying to curate deep retrofit in the UK at scale. So we really understand that there is a massive need for retrofit. Like, there's no escaping that. 80% of our homes we live in at the moment are still there by 2050. We've got fuel poverty. We've got damp and mold issues that are pervasive issues. We need to solve these. We need to retrofit. Now, we think that retrofit needs better thought about it. It's not single measure stuff. It's not like one size fits all. It's specific to the types of building. It's specific to the types of people that live in those buildings as well. So we have sort of flipped it on its head in terms of the retrofit market and said, well, actually, what we want to focus on is the outcomes of retrofit, not walking away at the end of a project once you've installed the measures, but actually guaranteeing that performance and standing by it for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, being there when things go wrong, so that residents in homes actually come away with a system that works, that they want to live in that home, they feel healthy, they feel comfortable, it's affordable. Now, affordable, I think sometimes people think means zero bills or very low bills. Now, we think that that's not the right way to go, because actually, if you reduce everyone's bills to zero, you can't do as much retrofit. So if people are spending £2,000 on their energy, their gas and electric at the moment, and you suddenly take that to zero, there's £2,000 a year there that's going missing that could be helping to do more retrofit in more homes. So the comfort plan is a mechanism that we think is really critical to get retrofit working at scale. And essentially what that does is kind of replaces the energy bill with a comfort plan, so a service charge for a comfortable, desirable, warm, healthy, no damp and mold, a home that works for the people that live in the home. But it's a new concept. People pay their utility suppliers at the moment for their energy. They're used to that. They're often upset about it. Prices go up and down, but they're used to it. It's kind of the norm. Comfort Plan is a new service offering, and people don't necessarily understand what that means and who they're going to be paying and how it will work and who's backing up this performance guarantee. So the work that we did with DAM was to go in depth with some of the residents in properties that we've completed over the last years And we've done hundreds of homes in the UK, but we're looking to scale up rapidly. And to work with the residents and really kind of get their feedback on how that proposition for comfort and that service offering would work. What does that look like for a resident in their home? What are they willing to pay? Who are they willing to pay as well? Who do they trust? Dan's done some really insightful work that we'll go into more depth in the following slides. I think I'll hand over to Kim to explain Osborne's role in this project for the low-carbon retrofits that we've done.
So, Kim's role in this, you're the customer liaison officer at Osborne.
I am.
What's interesting about Kim is she's not a building nerd. She's someone who's worked with residents for a long time, traditionally working in renovation, which could be called retrofit. Retrofit's such an appalling word. Dealing with kitchens and bathrooms. And so on this project, this was your first experience of moving into the low-carbon world.
It was, yes.
Yeah. So,
very interesting.
Yeah. How did you come to be taking the job at all?
I think I'd gone to a company where when they had complaints, any works for them was you're behind the desk. Everything is behind the desk, dealing with complaints. I prefer going out, meeting people face-to-face, complaint, deal with it face-to-face, as you would. And it was looking for another job, and this fell into my lap.
So really. Kim has undergone trial by fire, being thrown into the world of deep retrofit. At the Coll face, helping residents understand the process that they're going to be led through as she's learning it herself.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not been an easy endeavour.
It's not, no, but we rise to the challenge.
Yeah.
We all do as a team.
So, how would you characterise your day-to-day on this sort of project?
Day-to-day, you can never sit down and say, right, I'm going to be doing this, doing that. You can make out a plan, I'm going to visit this person, that person, that person. But then, obviously, the work starts, a resident needs help, attention, and your whole plan for the day goes out the window. So you have to try and visit most of those residents, just make sure that they're comfortable with the work that's going ahead that day.
Yep.
And then obviously visit them throughout as the works are going ahead.
Because, I assume most of the people in the audience today, they're aware of what a deep retrofit entails. But it's such a disruptive and intrusive process that she's the one who gets the grief. I think it was really interesting that, it's client management, it's customer management, it's making people feel comfortable with what's happening to them. And so I thought it was really insightful that Kim, as part of her efforts, explains to the customers that she works with early on in the process, you're going to hate me. You're going to hate this process.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting, it was a really interesting insight.
You've got to be honest with them at the end of the day, and you've got to say, look, we're not going to be here 5, 10 days, 15 days. Your pilot schemes, we could discover things as we're going along. You've got to be honest with them at the end of the day, and that is why I say to every single resident, you're going to phone me up one day and say, I hate you, Kim, I really hate you. Why did you put me through this? But you just listen to them, you let them vent, and they, once you've listened to them, you then action any concerns that they've got. And you've got to do it. You've got to do it because you are taking over these people's homes, and no matter how hard you try, let's keep it clean, let's do this, let's manage it properly, you're having this done tomorrow, but it doesn't happen. No matter how hard you try to make sure the whole sequence works, you know that at some stage and you're going to have to be there for that resident.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
So the team has been excellent. If you've attended some of the other panels over the last couple of days, you'll have encountered them yourselves. End of play yesterday, we saw Raf from Bowtie and Rafe from Enfield, who have been instrumental in the process. But even when you've got top players who were involved, things still go wrong. Schedules get broken. Things break down, things fall apart, specifications need to be re-specified following installation. And it's people like Kim that take the heat. Now, it's probably worth hearing from a resident. Now, sadly, we couldn't find anyone who was, I don't know, suitable or willing or able to join us on stage here today. So we have a little video from Mr. Kadazi. If we can throw it the screen.
First of all, for how the outside look beauty, and inside the small size centimeters of windows transformation, it has make a home a wow. Just like you feel like you've got the, you know, I used to say like it's like a penthouse, but you know, it's home. I can go in the garage, I can stay in the garage for up to 2 hours without any jacket, but we are in winter. I can be in the house with the way I have with my t-shirt. Sometimes I don't even put the heater on. Everything is perfect. Everything is perfect. So this was actually a great decision, a very massive improvement. It was, it's a good gift.
So, all right, we're back, yeah. So it's magnificent hearing from someone like him. He is delighted with the process. He's delighted with the outcome. But it's not always the case that the residents are quite so happy. So, at this point, this is where Alex and I were introduced to the fray. So, trying to find out whether the projects could be considered a success. Perhaps in terms of performance. Now, we tend to leave that to someone like Zach, who's much better qualified to consider. But we needed to develop a strategy to interrogate the subject so we could interview the people to understand what was going to be meaningful and what would make a difference. So, anyone who's worked in the corporate world, you might recognize this. We did workshops, we came up with whiteboards, and we produced structured questionnaires. So we could systematize the process, we could make sense of what was going to be important to Energiesprong, to people at Osborne's, to everyone, all the stakeholders throughout the supply chain and the value chain. Now, we needed to come up with a bunch of ideas because we had to build a hypothesis that we could test by actually talking to people. And develop a method that didn't just confirm our biases, like confirm our expectations. We sought to disprove the ideas that we had, the ideas that we held true, that we had faith in, and we just got on it. So, in developing that program, we set out to work with the Energiesprong guys to look at the subjects that we thought were going to be the most important. Because at the end of the day, Alex and I need to produce a bunch of insights and recommendations that are going to feed into the development and evolution of a comfort plan proposition and what's actually going to make that work. So we're not just going to come up with some copy for a brochure that talks about why it's good. It's strategizing how the whole delivery chain, how the whole supply chain and the value chain needs to be formed and managed in order to deliver satisfaction and success again and again and again. And unfortunately, it's not that easy because things go wrong. Like an aphorism Alex and I use all the time is getting things wrong is part of the process. Like continually getting the same things wrong, nah, that obviously isn't. So how do we make sense of what went right, what went wrong, and build out from there? So the first question was, what even is comfort? Because comfort means so many things to so many different people. Like building nerds are thinking about thermal performance, first and foremost. Like the CLO, the resident team, they're thinking about physical comfort. What's going to make the resident happier in their own home? But similarly, when we're introducing this sort of disruption and change, we're affecting how people use their homes, for the better and for the worse, to some extent. And then we have to look at all these other issues, like physical comfort, changes to the property and how that affects how they experience it. Hang on, I forgot my glasses. So, emotional comfort, the disruption in the process can create degrees of anxiety. Well, just project disruption. budgets get used up. Specification and respecification means that things that were supposed to happen might not happen. Then we look at cost. The project budget, how that's affected, how the residents themselves are affected, and how unexpected costs figure into the process. We have to consider health, because the retrofit and decarbonisation process has this emergent property where people's homes become better, more comfortable, healthier. Like damp and mould is such a fundamental issue and a headline issue nowadays. So yeah, you can see all of these other issues, and then the last thing is metrics. What are going to be meaningful? Like, again, if you worked in the corporate world, you know what KPIs are. You probably know what OKRs are, objective key results. But, I mean, you've got to listen to people. If you're just ticking boxes, you're not doing your job right. So, we looked into these issues in a bit more depth. So, in developing the questionnaire and the methodology for going out to speak with residents directly and over the phone, where we couldn't actually get access to the properties themselves, I'm going to have to lean forward for this. We've paraphrased like a 16-page document that we used. So how comfortable are you in your home now? We need to benchmark what's going on. What do you actually expect from your home? Now, something that's peculiar to the UK and Ireland, and probably other territories, is we often don't really expect to be comfortable in their homes. Like, they're really badly built. Like, the poor quality of build is an essential quality of the ventilation system. Like, there's all sorts of madness baked in. And the moment you stop heating that home, like, man, it changes. So we wanted to make sense of how to think about cost. And so to think about cost, we really needed to think about value. What was going to be valuable to the residents? What's going to make it worth them going through this process? And then qualify their expectation and the outcome against, like, how has it helped you? So thinking in a sort of corporate marketing way, like, how are we going to build an understanding that we can turn into messaging? So when people are evangelizing the benefits of deep retrofit or a comfort plan, what can they say to people that's going to make a difference? And we have to think about behavior. So, you know, how do you use your home? An essential thing, if you look at SAP or PHPP, they're great in terms of giving you a standardized methodology, but none of them actually reflect how folk live, particularly not now following COVID with hybrid working and working from home. Like, the world has changed, and the things we need to create need to reflect that. And support, the last one. Man, you change a system like this, you change how people have to think and use their homes. They need an awful lot of support. Like shifting from a gas combi boiler, where everything's instant, to a heat pump. It's a significant issue, and it is often assumed, particularly within social housing, that we can just do things to people and they will have to put up with it. So I see Tanya Jennings in the audience. She told us something which I'm sure we've all heard, that people often feel retrofit is something that's done to them rather than for them. That's not great. So at this, we developed 4 key themes from the feedback. Now, these hold true whether the project could be considered a success in the eyes of the resident or a failure. I'm actually going to have to get up to read this because I can't squint my way through it. So first thing, thermal performance is not the most important issue. So everyone loves a warm home, but not everyone thinks a warm home makes the whole retrofit experience worth it. The second thing is meeting expectations is essential for success. Now, what those expectations are, well, that's for Zach and Kim to sort out as they manage the process. But meeting your customers' expectations can turn them into an evangelist. So if you're thinking about place-based retrofit, that means converting whole neighborhoods, turning it into an aspirational project, something they want to be a part of. But the converse can also be true. Like, if you've got unhappy residents complaining about something to their neighbors, man, that will run through a community fast. Then a comfort plan is about delivering outcomes, not technology. So installing the right measures won't guarantee success. Like, it could be down to misuse or a quirk of the building fabric, the existing fabric, or it could just be a mistake that someone made. But if the technology doesn't deliver the desired outcomes, then it is a problem. It's not a solution. And then the last one, which Alex and I, inevitably, we think to be the most important, success is driven by good customer experience. So customer experience is the summation of user experience. It's the big, broad meta outcome at the end of it. So in those terms, retrofit is emotional as well as practical. It's all about how people feel about it. So success depends on the performance of everyone involved as much as the performance of the technology. And by that, I tend to be leaning on how all the different stakeholders in the supply chain combine to deliver the whole project. So it could be disappointment created because a certain piece of kit that was promised never actually turned up. Or it could be a tension developed between a resident and one of the installation team. It could be real, it could be imagined, it could be fair, it could be unfair. It doesn't matter. It's all about how people feel about what's gone on. So I'd like to throw to these guys, because we have talked about this a little bit already, we're not coming entirely cold, but how these conclusions resonate with them and their experiences of these projects.
So I'll chime in first there, Dan. So there's some healthy or controversial debate, I think, out in the industry of, we've talked about fabric first for quite a while, and now suddenly it's been slipped to fabric fifth. And I think that debate is really interesting, but I think the findings that we've had here and the work that we've done with residents has flipped that completely on its head for me. And I would maybe say controversially that I agree fabric is not first. People are first. If you do people first retrofit, you start making better decisions for what actually needs to go into that home. So yes, if you've got an existing home that's reasonably efficient, reasonably airtight, could handle just having a heat pump put in and decent controls, okay, fine, that can work. If you've got a poorly insulated home with damp and mold issues, you need to think about what the fabric is going to have. You need to kind of tackle those issues to solve it for the actual resident in place. So someone else said to me a little while ago that maybe this chimes on what Tanya has said, that there's kind of two types of people who are having heat pumps installed at the moment, like those that are having it forced on them and those that are offsetting their Porsche. And I think that really characterized it really well for me, because we've got to start thinking okay, these are new systems and they are different to use, but they're not bonkers mad. They have control systems. You turn the temperature on and you program what times you want. So we need to put those systems in place to help the resident get the most from it. And I think that's where our from Energiesprong and Osborne's kind of closeness and working together is really important, because we all need to kind of support the supporters. So Kim's out there in the field with the residents. Actually, we need to support you by giving you the right information about what to tell the residents and how they should be interacting with the systems. And I have lots of experience of going into either pre-retrofit or post-retrofitted homes where systems have been put in, like mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. Now, those systems can work absolutely fine, but it depends on how the resident has been told they're going to interact with it. Is it their responsibility to change the filters? Who do they contact if something's not working or it's making a funny noise?
They contact Kim.
Always.
Well, I was at a new build scheme a couple of years ago that had mechanical ventilation with heat recovery, and there was only 6 properties there, and they had been told 3 different things between the properties. One was, don't do anything with it, leave that door closed, don't touch that box, just ignore it, it does its thing. One was, if you hear something funny or you're not sure, contact the housing provider. And one was, you need to change the filters regularly, go in there every 3 months, and here's the filter you need to buy. So, across 6 homes, they were told 3 different things. So, we need to improve that that actual journey for the residents
doing an
as well.
aftercare service. That's
Yes. So I think that's on us as well, not you, to deliver that. But yeah, I think that people first focus for me is critical here.
I think, so throwing to Kim, like one of the things you described when we talked about the project is, so taking this people first approach, like the big issues are really easy to fix. So you worked with well, I say really easy to fix, Mrs. Chowdhury.
Yeah.
She had damp and mold throughout her kitchen. She had slugs crawling their way through the house relentlessly. Now, she sang Kim's praises to high heaven. They are friends now. Like, her 3 boys are happy, healthy, delighted in their new home. Alex and I met them. And that's sort of an issue. You know what the problem is. Like, you can see it coming, and you know how to fix it. Like, the strategy is relatively simple. But it's the emergent issues, which you can't predict, that are the real challenge. Like, how do you deal with... So you spoke about awareness being a key issue in terms of delivering the experience. Like, how do you approach customer management to be aware of the things that people might not spot, that the residents might not be able to articulate for themselves because they don't know what they're looking at? How do you be there to be the conduit to find the things out?
Well, you are just there. You go to every individual resident, and they are literally, you give a bespoke, they have their own bespoke experience for the job, really, for what's going to happen to their home. And you have to sit and listen, and anything that you see that is going to cause an issue, I have a fantastic team, so I can go to them and it's actioned. You know, and if it's not, then I just chase them, because we don't leave anything, and we have that resident know that they are our priority, and they're not just going to be, you tell me something, it's going to be pushed onto the carpet. That's not how it works.
Sure.
We action it straight away, and we make sure that resident knows they're number one.
Yeah. So, all right, between the pair of you, in terms of managing expectations, like, I think it's really interesting that, so Zach sets the scene, and then it becomes Kim's job to lead the residents and help set those expectations through the process, which includes the management of things like the surveying that has to go on. So the resident can understand what they can expect from the end product, like the end of the retrofit. Like, learning on the job.
Oh,
that can't have been easy.
Literally going out with every surveyor, going to every property, and literally, because usually a surveyor will turn up at anyone's home. You know, there's your appointment, they're coming. They'll come into a home, and the resident's like, yeah, do what you're doing. Nothing's explained. Whereas we went out and we went to every single property with those residents, and we had those surveyor explain everything. I was even taking videos of when they did the air tightness, because I'd never seen it before, and a couple of others hadn't. So we were taking videos of how they did. And then obviously explaining, we were able to explain properly then to every single resident. Obviously before, afterwards, we're going to be doing this test. But every survey we went and we explained everything. And we had the surveyor if we didn't know.
I think
that's the only way to learn, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and the next step in that journey is to kind of codify that into something that you can always use with residents.
Yeah,
so whether that's a handbook, whether it's the video guides, whether it's leaflets, you know, what information do they get to help? Because, you know, we need to scale up retrofit quickly. The work that you've done on, 10 properties in pilot projects here and there, like, you can get really hands-on with individual residents, and you can really understand their issues.
You've got to get hands-on with them.
When we're doing 1,000 properties per schemes, 10,000 properties per scheme, you need to have that basis of knowledge of what's my range of residents going to be like, what kind of comms am I going to need to use, and rely on that then and develop it iteratively. But yeah, that's why we do things at pilot scale first, and then look at how we can kind of use those archetypes or those solutions at bigger scale and roll it out. I think that's really critical for the whole industry to do.
So a key recommendation that I mean, Alex and I, we haven't made officially yet, but something that we are throwing out there is, and if there are any housing people, asset managers knocking about in the audience who want to talk about this, find us after and we'll have a chat. But because local authorities and housing associations, they're all trying similar paradigms, they're all addressing the same problems. And what Zach suggested, this codified approach, something more akin to the soft landings approach developed by folk like Bill Borders and Adrian Lehman. Now, you've got to pay to use soft landings, and you don't necessarily need to. That approach might not be right for a situation which requires an awful lot of soft skills. But there's no reason that local authorities, housing associations can't pool their resources to build something significant. Obviously, Alex and I will throw our hat into the ring for this, but someone needs to do it. We don't actually care whether it's us or not. Like, there needs to be a bringing together of understanding, research, making sense of this end-to-end process, because it happens in the corporate world. It happens in manufacturing. But retrofit, we talk about retrofit at scale, that it is desirable that it happens. But there is such an artisanal quality to retrofit. I spoke with Fionn Stevenson, former figurehead of Retrofit Zelig in the UK. She taught me the metaphor that retrofit is like dental work. You can assess a mouth, and you understand the paradigm of a mouth and how teeth work. But as a dentist, you have to assess each individual tooth and how what's happened to that tooth affects the tooth next to it and the function of the mouth as a whole. And we have to think similarly about neighborhoods, like rows of houses, because typologies might be the same, but they all exist uniquely. They've all suffered or been through their own lived experience, and that needs to be acknowledged through the process. So we need something quite significant to happen in this space to account for these conclusions and to create, I don't know, like a codified cycle of continual improvement from which we can learn and throw into the next project. Because these guys, they're trying to move from tens to hundreds to thousands as fast as possible because, man, world's burning, isn't it?
I think we have learned to change the language about retrofit as well. That what the journey of retrofit is going to be like isn't all about energy savings and that comfort at the end. You're going to have a disruptive journey because there are builders in the home. There is scaffolding on, especially when you're doing deep retrofit, so lots of multiple measures. But it's a journey worth going on because of the outcomes. So if we focus on those outcomes and help understand what the resident wants, and I think what we've got there on the screen about thermal performance is not the most important issue. It's actually really quite revolutionary for me because, for so long I've sort of thought, okay, well, it's about temperature in homes, and yes, that will get like relative humidity down and deal with other things, but really people want 21 degrees and they want to feel comfortable. But I've spent a lot of time surveying residents, and it's amazing how many live in what I would think is an uncomfortable home, and they are happy as Larry. They've been there for many years. It's their home. It's their habitat. They've set it up how they want. They're comfortable. And I think we have to be really cautious about meddling with what they're used to because they're happy with that. So we need to take them on the journey with us as well, but doing that engagement piece with them early on, getting that feedback from them, and you can do that in codified ways, so you can do it at low cost and at scale. That helps you to get the right solutions done, which are often the same thing, but you've helped take them on the journey so they're more on your side than on the I'm having this forced upon me. And I think that's a really key learning for us. Get that early engagement with residents, understand what they want from it, and then roll on from there.
We can take questions from the audience, if anyone has got any.
Hi, my name's Dan. I work for a student housing lettings agency in Manchester. One of the key themes I'm getting from this is people first, but how do you sort of produce these people first retrofits when your people change year in, year out? And how do you, we run a portfolio of over 300 houses. We don't have the staff to go in and teach every house how to use the home every year. So how would you recommend going about that?
Yeah, so an interesting approach that's come up on one of the projects that we've worked collaboratively on is thinking about that. You know, what happens when someone moves? And what's been put on the equipment is QR codes with a short YouTube video link that actually shows that unit in that house with someone going, I want to change my heating, so I'm going to push this button, and then I can change this, and I can set that. And it's amazing how much easier that is, because, you know, all control systems are different. They're quite complex. I mean, I'm an engineer and a techie. I'm the techie nerd that, Dan mentioned early on. Like, I should be good at using those systems. And honestly, I go in some of those controls, and it takes me 20 minutes, 30 minutes to figure out, you know, where the information is I need and what the settings are and what it's doing. But you can't expect people to be using that. But, you know, if you've got that live piece of information, not a dusty old handover O&M manual that's sitting in a cupboard somewhere, you know, a thing that's at the point of use. And QR codes is one way, you know, that needs some digital inclusion to be able to use it, but, you know, actually better labeling on things as well, like really simple. This switch does this thing. You know, I go into so many places where there's a little red light on a switch, and you're like, is that the ventilation? Is it the immersion? Is it something? Should I turn it off? And residents might turn it off because it's got a red light on it. You know, they want to save the money. So, yeah, there are better ways of doing that. I think the video links for me were a real eye-opener in sort of helping the residents there.
Yeah, and I'd add to that monitoring. Like reasonable, monitoring doesn't have to be intrusive, but if you are responsible for maintaining the fabric of a property, it wouldn't be unreasonable to install sensors within one, like that cover air quality, temperature, like just the basics, and look for anomalous behavior. Like, presumably you're getting smart meters in your properties. We know there's an organization called Utopia, which they do, they have a data platform driven by sensors in high-density properties within the private rental sector and student accommodation, so high-density student accommodation. And they use monitoring across like 5 different metrics with smart meter energy use data to look for anomalies by like the floor of a building or the section of a building. And so where they need to intervene to speak with the residents to help them improve the management of the system that they live in, they can do it in a really targeted manner. So like they don't have to go to every single home. I mean, you know, they found like a 2% energy saving from a block of flats by addressing some issues that they identified in 2 individual flats on 1 floor. Like for the whole building for the year, like, I mean, they're dealing with big numbers. 2% might not be an issue when you're dealing with smaller numbers. But like, you can do really interesting things, and you don't have to piss people off while you do it. It needs to be sensitive to the individuals, the occupants, and their needs as well. We
had one property where the monitoring company called us up because they kept having their heating up too high, and they noticed, you know, it's not going to be economical for them. So we contacted the resident. She had 4 children, 4 bedrooms, and you have 2 children that are finding it very cold, so they're automatically going down, turning the heating up. You've got another couple of children that are then, whoa, it's too hot, open the windows. You know? So this poor unit was trying to balance out, and it was sort of like, turn down the thermostatic valves on those rooms, and hopefully the children will be fine then, and hopefully we've balanced that out. But the monitoring systems are fantastic.
Yeah, it's worth, I guess it's worth clarifying that an energy-sprung retrofit requires monitoring. So because of the performance guarantee, and certainly where the comfort plan is charged, that's backed up by the monitoring, which would be able to say the heat pump is performing as it should be performing, and the fabric is working as it should be performing. Now, people are always going to do what they want to do in their home and use as much hot water as they need and use whatever electrical appliances they need. That's fine, and we can separate that out in the monitoring and still be able to give that kind of helpful advice if we see an anomaly in there. So yeah, I think the simplified kind of monitoring where also you're using existing systems. Lots of heat pumps and PV systems have data. So, you don't need to necessarily put in extra monitoring, just use what's already there. That's really key. And yeah, we found it very useful to diagnose issues and get back before something's a problem as well.
Lady with a hand up there, and I think there was a gentleman over there as well. We'll get to, is there anyone over there?
Thank you. We know that money is about emotion. Can you tell us about the role that you've observed of people's attitude to money and how much it's going to cost and how much they'll have to pay themselves? Thank you.
So we work predominantly in social housing, so the residents wouldn't be paying for the retrofit themselves. So that money discussion is client side. And the business case is really important there to pull on all of the possible funding sources. So grant funding, savings on repairs and maintenance. The fact you're going to have to do decency homeworks on some properties. So can you bring those budgets forwards to make it work for deep retrofit? I think from the resident perspective, the money thing comes down to how much am I going to be paying for my utility bills? And how much am I going to be paying for this comfort plan? And that's what we were researching here. And it's quite a thorny issue, actually, and it's quite complex because a lot of people don't understand their utility bills and their utility supplier. So we have numerous examples where the data is showing that the property is working fine and it's doing what it should be doing, but the resident is ringing up and saying, my bills, since the retrofit, have gone up. What's happening here? And actually, when you look into that, often they're paying off an old debt, or the utility supplier has seen that they've changed to an all-electric home because the gas has been removed, and they've said, "Oh, it's all electric. I need to put you on a higher rate," because they're expecting, electric resistive heaters. So, Kim is often having to help residents then go through that thing with the utility suppliers. We would like to work closer with the utility suppliers as well. We're doing a bit of work with Octopus at the moment, so they have a zero homes bill. So we think that's actually quite attractive to use with the comfort plan, because you could entirely replace the utility bill with just a comfort plan that's a fixed amount. So then it becomes very predictable for residents, and you don't have any issues with price increases and Ukraine wars pushing up the cost of gas and electricity. So there's ways to tackle that in the future, but yeah, it's complex and it adds a lot to Kim's plate.
Sorry, a bit of a sore throat. No, with the bills as well, what we're finding is a lot of residents are saying we've never put this much electric in because we've obviously taken the gas out. We've not paid this much for our electric. And it's like, yes, but look at how much you were paying with your gas and electric. Combine the two, because you're now using your electric to source your heating. But also, a lot of them are on pay-as-you-go, which again is quite expensive. And trying to explain to the residents that, look, this isn't going to magically save you money straight away. Give it a year, 2 years max. Learn to reuse your home, how to use your electricity. And then once the solar panels obviously kick in, you get in the sun, you are going to see a saving. Yes, but we thought we were going to get it now. And we're putting too much electric in. Please look at what you paid in your gas. And it's trying to get the balance. And then the kilowatt usage as well. They're looking at money, but it's actually the kilowatt usage that you need to look at and how much they're being charged for the kilowatt usage. Because it's not all about last year I paid this much and now I'm paying this. Yes, but look at your kilowatt usage, how much you would be in charge, plus your standing charge as well. So it's trying to get that across to the resident as well.
Yeah. And that's why it's an ongoing issue. It's not a one and done. Right, so I think we've got time for one more. We'll see if we can squeeze another one. That gentleman over there.
Can I talk about how you cope with interactions with other strategies? I suppose the one which I find around London at the moment is the fire safety. Oh, we can't afford to do this retrofit because they're insisting we have a separate staircase. That kind of issue, or recycling. We must constrain the way we do this property upgrade because we have recycling targets, and never mind you guys with retrofit. We have other things. We have net zero to achieve and save the world. So could you talk about that interaction with other strategies, and are they overdone? I think this. I wonder whether the safety thing may be overdone. But yesterday, the DLUC person said, on her list of multiple objectives she had to reconcile, safety was absolutely first after Grenfell, and everything else would drop out for safety. So how does all that feel to you, doing the great stuff you're doing?
So I always look for the opportunities in those things, and we have to work closely with the clients, who would mostly be local authorities or housing providers. So when you think from the safety point of view, like damp and mold risk is included in that, and that is a massive opportunity to retrofit and do things better. I think fire safety is as well, actually. So I was speaking with ACO, and they've got some monitoring kit, and all of it links to the fire systems. So actually there's lots of fire alarms that are in properties that can now start linking with temperature sensors and CO2 sensors. So actually there's quite a low-cost approach to being able to analyse your existing stock better because of fire safety that's happened in there. So I think once you start unpicking those complexities, you can find some opportunities. That's kind of the role that Energiesprong do in working with the clients to make that business case. There's always going to be some projects that drop out that you go, look, we're not going to do that one because you've got a budget you need to spend on that for other reasons, and that's fine. When we get to scale up, we want to start looking for the properties that you routinely can do and that don't have those issues, and you can fund it, and you can, lather, rinse, repeat. Yeah.
All right. I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up now, but if you have any questions that you didn't get to ask, just noise us up. We'll be knocking around here. Just come say hello. Thank you very much to Alan for fixing up the presentation earlier. We had a few technical issues, so he deserves his props. And we have a podcast as well called Zero Ambitions Podcast. If you're interested in sustainability in the built environment, check that. We're on all the apps. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you very much, Kim and Zach.
Thank you.